15 degrees, 18 minutes east.
The story begins in the year 2006, a time when a civil war is causing great chaos in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or the DRC. This turmoil is the result of a fierce struggle for control among various multinational mining companies that are competing to dominate the local mining industry. The situation is tense, with many people affected by the violence and unrest. One day, the Minister of Mining and Natural Resources makes a surprising announcement. He declares that he will cancel and renegotiate contracts with all foreign mining companies operating in the country. This news creates a lot of uncertainty, leading to increased tensions among those involved. In the midst of this chaos, Jim Terrier, a skilled mercenary who works for a secretive Black Ops team, is sent to the DRC. He pretends to be there to ensure the safety of local projects, but his real mission is much more dangerous. Late one night, at an airstrip, Jim's partner, Annie, who is a doctor working for a non-governmental organization, or an NGO, is waiting for him. She politely declines the offer from her co-worker, Felix Moore, to drive her home, choosing instead to wait for Jim to arrive. While this is happening, Jim and his team are preparing for a crucial operation. They are tasked with assassinating the minister. The team consists of Reed, Bryson, and Jim, and they are guided by their leader, Terrence Cox. Terrence explains that their supervisor, Felix, will decide within a very short time, only 5 seconds, who will take the shot at the minister, and he has already made plans for a quick escape of the chosen shooter. As the tension builds, Jim takes his position in a hotel room, carefully assembling his sniper rifle. Soon, Felix contacts him with the news that Jim has been selected to carry out the assassination. Understanding that he will need to leave the country immediately after the mission, Jim asks Felix to keep an eye on Annie while he is away. With everything in place, the operation begins. Jim successfully takes the shot, hitting the minister and then quickly escaping from the scene. However, the aftermath of the assassination is devastating. The country erupts in widespread riots and destruction as people react to the shocking news. Fast forward 8 years, and Jim returns to the Congo, but this time, he is there as a humanitarian relief worker. One morning, while he is with a colleague named Eugene, they are assigned to a village to help build a well for clean water. Suddenly, a gang appears, specifically looking for Jim. When they spot him, Jim tries to explain that he is not there to cause trouble and only wants to provide clean water to the community. Despite his peaceful intentions, the gang attacks him. Jim skillfully uses his training to fight back, showing remarkable strength and skill. He manages to overpower the attackers, even turning their own weapons against them. However, in the chaos, Eugene, shocked by the violence, shoots one of the gang members in order to protect Jim. After the struggle, Jim searches the fallen attackers and discovers evidence that the ambush was meant exclusively for him. He expresses his gratitude to Eugene for his help and tries to convince him that what he did was necessary. However, Jim also decides that for the safety of their organization, they should stop all operations for the time being. Back in his hotel room in Kinshasa, Jim is troubled by haunting memories of the assassination he carried out years ago. The weight of his past actions pushes him to make a decision. He must leave the country at once. He travels to London, where he goes over his notes from his previous time in the Congo. While there, he meets with his old colleague, Terrence. Jim tells Terrence about the recent attack he experienced. Terrence suggests that the attack could be connected to their past operation, and mentions that Felix, who used to handle their communications, might have important information. He suspects that Felix is currently in Barcelona, and offers to reach out to their other team members, Reed and Bryson, just to be safe. As Jim prepares to leave, he notices that someone is following him. Sensing he is in danger, he manages to evade his pursuers, and makes his way to a bar to meet his friend Stanley. At the bar, Jim updates Stanley on the attack, and reveals that the assailants were expecting proof of his death. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out in the bar, leading to a fight. With Stanley's help, Jim escapes, but afterward, he feels extremely dizzy. A doctor later diagnoses him with cumulative head trauma caused by post-concussive syndrome. Despite the doctor's warnings to avoid stress and confrontation, Jim is determined to confront Felix in Barcelona. Stanley, although concerned, reluctantly agrees to assist him. Upon arriving in Barcelona, Jim checks into a safe house that Stanley contacts have arranged for him. Inside, he discovers a stash of weapons, hinting at the ongoing dangers. While searching for Felix, Jim unexpectedly runs into Annie, Annie, who is now with Felix, and he follows them to an adoption agency. Unaware that he is being watched, Jim later attends a seminar where Felix is one of the speakers. When Felix sees Jim, he looks visibly shaken. After the seminar, Jim and Felix finally meet. During their conversation, Felix reveals that he and Annie have gotten married. Felix promises to investigate the attack on Jim and invites him to dinner later that evening. At dinner, Jim's presence surprises Annie, who feels uncomfortable with his sudden reappearance in her life. During the dinner, Felix shares their plans to adopt a child, which further upsets Annie. As tensions rise and arguments ensue, Jim tries to intervene, but Annie, frustrated, storms out of the room. Jim quickly follows her, apologizing for disrupting her life, and gives her his contact information in case Felix finds any useful information. However, Annie leaves in anger, clearly upset by the unexpected turn of events. The next morning, Felix extended an invitation to Jim to join him at his countryside home for lunch. Though the setting was calm, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. Over a few glasses of wine, Felix's guard began to drop. Slurring slightly from his growing inebriation, he admitted that Jim's suspicions about the recent attack being tied to their involvement in the Congo assassination were probably accurate. Felix went on to reveal something even more alarming. All individuals connected to the 2006 operation were now under intense scrutiny. Their names had been included in a congressional subpoena list and were being monitored by Interpol. As Jim scanned the list, his eyes narrowed when he spotted Terrence's name, but failed to find Reed or Bryson mentioned. When he questioned their absence, Felix hesitated before dropping a chilling revelation. Jim was the last surviving member among the team of 3 shooters. Both Reed and Bryson had met untimely deaths, leaving Jim the sole target. Realizing the gravity of the threat against him, Jim casually announced that he had invited Stanley to join them for lunch. The reaction was immediate. Felix grew visibly uneasy, fidgeting before abruptly excusing himself. Sensing betrayal, Jim followed him and snatched his phone, quickly scanning through Felix's messages.
Who was there for her?
His suspicions were confirmed. Felix had been secretly feeding information to someone. Returning upstairs, Jim found Annie in the bedroom, her expression a mix of confusion and unease. He confessed to her that he had lied about Stanley coming and warned that Felix's actions were endangering all of their lives. Annie's confusion turned to fear when Jim suddenly tensed, noticing shadows moving outside. The house was quickly surrounded, and without hesitation, Jim pulled Annie to the ground, shielding her from the first spray of gunfire. Meanwhile, Felix stumbled through the living room, refusing to acknowledge the severity of the danger. Jim managed to save him from a bullet once, but Felix's reckless, drunken defiance soon led to his demise. With no time to process the loss, Jim turned his focus to Annie, instructing her to stay close as they moved carefully through the house. The pair retreated to the wine cellar, where Jim ambushed his first mercenary to enter. With cold precision, he incapacitated the man, taking his vest, weapon, and communication device. Annie, crouched in a corner, watched in horrified silence. The calm, calculated fighter before her was a stark contrast to the man she thought she had known. Outside, the mercenaries interrogated the house staff, demanding to know Jim's location. Inside, Jim's instincts as a former Black Ops operative took over. Using the stolen communication device, he monitored their movements, planning his counterattack. However, the number of enemies proved overwhelming, and Jim was forced to retreat to a small bathroom. The mercenaries, growing impatient, opened fire on the bathroom door. When their bullets stopped, a voice crackled over the comms, offering Annie safety in exchange for Jim's surrender. Jim remained silent, unmoved by the false promise. Moments later, the attackers set the bathroom ablaze, hoping to smoke him out. Anticipating this, Jim climbed to the skylight, where he took down a sniper lying in wait. Using the body to break his fall, he escaped the burning room and rejoined Annie. The chaos within the house intensified, but Jim managed to buy a few precious moments by tossing a grenade into the hallway. The explosion disoriented the attackers, allowing him and Annie to flee. They sped away in a car, but the mercenaries pursued relentlessly. A second grenade, perfectly timed, disabled the pursuing vehicle, giving them a temporary reprieve. Now guided by Annie, they reached a farmer's shed, where they borrowed another vehicle. As they drove, Annie demanded answers, her voice trembling with frustration and fear. Jim, burdened by guilt, finally opened up. He revealed that their work in Congo years ago, including building airstrips and ensuring security, had been a facade. The true purpose had been to smuggle weapons to rebel forces, with Felix acting as the intermediary. Jim admitted to assassinating the Congolese minister, confessing that Felix had assured him Annie would be safe when he left. When they arrived at Jim's apartment, he gave Annie strict instructions. She was to drive around the block for 15 minutes and leave without him if he didn't return. Jim entered the building cautiously, his every movement deliberate. Spotting a tripwire rigged to an explosive at the front door, he disarmed it and noticed movement in the apartment across the street. Re-engaging the trap as a decoy, Jim exited through the front door, ensuring he was seen by the watchers. Moments later, the trap detonated, engulfing the attackers in a fiery explosion. Relocating to a safer location, Jim met with Stanley, who had uncovered critical information. The recent attacks were orchestrated by a powerful organization, posing as an international trading company. Led by Terrence, the group aimed to erase all evidence of their crimes in Congo before finalizing a lucrative deal. Stanley warned Jim that Annie was now a target, her life in imminent danger following Felix's death. The next morning, Jim leaves Annie a heartfelt note explaining his intentions. He bids Stanley farewell and travels to Gibraltar, where he meets Interpol agent Jackie Barnes. Jim shares details about the organization's activities, earning Jackie's trust and contact information. Jim then contacts Terrence, arranging a meeting at an aquarium. Despite his worsening head injury, he confronts Terrence, who attempts to stall by taunting him. Jim reveals he has concrete evidence of their crimes, forcing Terrence to admit that Annie is in immediate danger. Their conversation escalates into a violent firefight. Though injured, Jim eliminates Terrence's men. During the chaos, Terrence tries to use Annie as leverage. However, she seizes the opportunity to escape. In a climactic moment, a bull, released amidst the gunfight, charges and kills Terrence. Exhausted and wounded, Jim collapses as police arrive, separating him from Annie. At the hospital, Jim agrees to cooperate with Interpol, providing evidence that leads to the arrest of the CEO of the mining corporation involved in the Congo operation. After serving time, Jim is released and returns to the Congo. There, he reunites with Annie, determined to build a new chapter in the land that shaped their fates. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.